This looks like a successful build, right? A heavy hitter ready for ambush camouflage? But what you're looking at is a lie. Beneath this finish is a structural disaster. A gap so wide I had to plug it with industrial scrap just to keep the hull together. Between a paint that nearly broke my airbrush and the culture shock of building my first ever tank, this build almost ended up in the bin. Today I'm showing the ugly side of modeling, the failures, the hacks, and the desperate saves that rescued this Airfix King Tiger. Let's start with fixing the monumental gap that ended up in the front of my model. I'm not sure if I messed up or if this is actually an issue with the kit itself, but I found a piece of plastic rod, I sized it to fit, scraped it down as you can tell by the shavings, and cut it to size. Now it's necessary to apply some Tamiya extra thin cement to the rod itself and carefully slide it into place with tweezers. Press it into place, give it a chance to set, and then we come back and fill it with Vallejo's plastic putty filler. Clean it up, sand it off, looks as good as new. Then we're going to go ahead and apply coat of Mr. Surfacer 1500 to make sure that we have a good quality base. We've mixed together two colors here, Tamiya Buff and Tamiya Flat Earth, as the original paint was dry as a bone. I'm going to just sit back and watch with you all as I lay down the silky smooth coat of paint. Good quality paint should lay down just like you see here, and that is not the case later, so stay tuned. While we're watching, why don't you go ahead and throw us a like or a subscribe. It really helps a small channel like mine grow. Here I've managed to salvage some of the original bottled paint. I used flow improver and a mixture of thinners to try to salvage this. I've filtered it, thinned it, and I'm attempting to spray it through my airbrush to paint the infamous ambush camouflage. But as you can see here, this is not exactly going well. Again, I've strained the paint, I thinned it to the point where basically it created spider webs. It just would not agree with my airbrush. I have no idea. This Humbrol paint just did not agree. That's all I can say. But here you'll see, we'll go ahead and touch it up with the provided brush. I decided that I would take a tack and to try attempting painting this as if I was a 10-year-old kid that had received the starter kit and whose parent had managed to salvage the paint. Here we're taking a look at the green. I was not able to salvage this paint, not for lack of trying, but I did find a comparable color of Vallejo Model Air in my kit, and I was able to successfully spray it onto the tank. As you can see here, much better results. Here I'm going back with some Tamiya Buff and Flat Earth mixed together to clean up all of the overspray from the original brown. Actually wasn't quite satisfied with the edge that I got with the brown after that cleanup, so I came back with the brush and that again recovered Humbrol paint and was able to touch up the camouflage before we start the weathering process. Overall, I'm happy in the end, but it was definitely rough getting there. Before I weather, I'm going to go ahead and lay down some gloss varnish. This will help the weathering material flow into the cracks a little smoother. One thing to note about that is this varnish is water-based, and the material that I'm weathering with is also water-based. This was intentional, as I knew that in certain areas I might actually get some cross bonding between the varnish and the weathering material when I apply it on thick, as you see here. My intention here is to create a rough texture on the tank so that I didn't actually have to go and apply other texturing methods, and this worked quite well, and you'll see that in the high resolution photos at the end of the video. Definitely encourage you to check those out. Here I'm weathering the road wheels, the first step. This was quite the process. As an aircraft modeler, I'm definitely not used to having to deal with so many wheels. It's a new experience, I'll say that. Here I'm using some real steel Vallejo paint to paint the guide runners, or the cleats on, I guess it'd be the internal cleats for the track. And forgive me if I don't have the correct term. I grew up on a farm and around bulldozers and track vehicles and whatnot, so I'm going by common vernacular, at least on our farm. So if that is not correct, I apologize. Here I'm using rust paint around, or excuse me, rust weathering fluid, very bright orange, to create, again, something that I've seen many times out on the farm. And then layering this with a rust streaking effect. And then I will also layer a streaking grime effect here on top of that. Looking at vehicles on the farm, you would often see many different colors of orange and different colors of rust, from very dark to very, very, very bright orange if it was very fresh, and also lots of streaks from mud and oil and grease as you grease the carriers and whatnot. So I tried to mimic that just basically from memory. I was pretty happy with how the tracks turned out. Here, these tanks didn't move that fast, so I did want to create some splash from where the tank would pick up mud from the end, and so using a paintbrush I was able to create very targeted splash. And then at the speeds that they would be going, I diluted down this earth from Vallejo, and using a toothbrush I'm splashing it on, and then I come back with a brush to drag that down and create very minimal splashing effects. Again, these tanks, to my knowledge, did not move very fast. I know any of the track vehicles I've been on, worked with on the farm, if you went at full speed, they will throw some mud, but not to the extent, say, of a modern track tank, at least to my knowledge. And again, feel free to correct me if I'm wrong. I encourage the engagement, just going by what I know. And I did not spend a tremendous amount of time researching this tank, other than just movies and whatnot that I've seen throughout the years. So I do not claim to be an expert. We're ready to go ahead and put on the decals at this stage, and we need to weather those. So I'm using some streaking grime to weather the decals here. And throughout the process, I actually lost some of the bright orange enamel weathering I'd put on the exhaust tips. And again, just experience on the farm, found that these tips often were quite bright orange. And here I'm painting them, the insides flat black. I looked to drill them out and make them hollow. I just didn't happen to have a bit that was fine enough. Now that this has had some time to set and get locked in and dry, now we're ready to go ahead and lock this in with an ultra flat varnish to create that final look. And here we have the final pictures. I hope you enjoyed my making of the video. I am sure I made a lot of mistakes along the way, and if you're normally an armor builder, I definitely welcome any feedback or comments that you have. Appreciate all the feedback, positive and negative, in the comments. I do hope that you all have a blessed day and enjoy the pictures, and be sure to check out my airplane content. I'm definitely more comfortable in that area.